Welcome to Red Alert, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here today for a special report. Here today we're talking about the United Kingdom massive general election coming up. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know because it's a pretty big one and we've not talked about it at all on anything here on SWN, and I want to take this episode today to change that. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome inside Red Alert. We're going to get you spend the next however many minutes the show is going to take to kind of get caught up with us about what's going on in this election, because it's a critically important election, not just for the people of Britain, but it has massive implications for the world, obviously, with Brexit. And if anyone's listening out there in Britain, to any British listeners we may have, I know Andy Cowles has been on the show. He's obviously very much feeling excited about this election. He's definitely following it. From what I've been able to hear from him, he's been talking about this a lot. And it is, I really should have, I apologize to everyone involved. I should have planned ahead a little bit more and been able to get him on the air a little bit sooner, but we'll definitely have him on. I promise you. We'll definitely try and get him on to talk about some things to do with the UK election. But first, I do want to take this moment to kind of give you a quick little preview of the UK election. What's going on? What are the major stories here? And kind of give you a crash course in the UK election, because I've been following it because really of one man himself, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, kind of the quote-unquote Bernie Sanders of Britain. He is a very left-wing candidate. He has been taking on incredible smears from mainstream media there, because as much as you may think the media sucks here, oh boy, is it, like, pretty much every single newspaper, every single major publication is owned by a Rupert Murdoch type person, or a Rupert Murdoch equivalent, if you will. So that is kind of exemplary of why right now the polling average is around 43 to 33, with Labour trailing over the Conservative Party at the moment, even though Britain, obviously, it is a left-leaning country, much more, like, they have a socialized healthcare, they have free college, they pretty much have all the things that, again, that Bernie Sanders wants, but they have been, thanks to attacks on them by the conservative media that we see, they have been critically underfunded by years of austerity from both Labour in the form of Tony Blair and the conservative government that has been recently in place with people like Johnson, May, and even further back David Cameron. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of the way the polls are. The polls, they have been wrong before. In the 2017 election, Jeremy Corbyn was supposed to be headed toward a blowout. He was supposed to be knocked off the face of the earth. The Corbyn era would have been ended as quickly as it would have begun, but no, he picked up major seats in Parliament, squeezed, at the time, Theresa May's majority down to a paper-thin margin. It's now even smaller. Under Boris Johnson, the polls there were wrong, so, I mean, they're not incredibly reliable. YouGov there is the big polling service, so, again, they're not very reliable here. They probably will not be very reliable there, and it's a big election, especially for the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn kind of fighting for his, pretty much, his political life here, because there are a lot of forces out to get him. Here is what he is saying coming into this election, and so here's a little ad they did about austerity, which I think is really good and really good kind of representation here. Pretty much what they do is they have this one billionaire and these five quote-unquote average Joes and kind of like a set there, and they say, oh, we're going to give you money in the form of like a disability grant and all that stuff.
Today we're going to find out who's better for the economy. Ordinary people or billionaires? So here we have 5 people who all lost money because of cuts and austerity. We're going to give them that money back in the form of a pay rise, pension, disability support, a student grant, and a small business loan. And now we're going to go to our billionaire and give him £20,000 in the form of a tax cut.
And then what they do after that is they kind of go in and they say, wow, the normal people, they're putting their money back in the economy, they're supporting local businesses, yada yada, and that money goes back into more people. There is such a major it's such a major and very powerful and very clear and accurate representation of what has long been a big talking point among the democratic socialists here in America, and pretty much what we've been saying from the left wing, like that if you invest in the middle class, if you invest in workers, they will come back to support you. So that's kind of what they're bringing to the table here. The Tories are much more about kind of protecting Brexit. They're saying, let's get Brexit done, and pretty much kind of giving scare tactics about what could happen if Brexit did take place. Here's a sample Tory ad.
I've been involved in opposing anti-terror legislation ever since I first went into Parliament in 1983.
Close down NATO.
I am against the replacement of Trident.
I'm not happy with the shoot-to-kill policy.
Abolish their army.
Fight all the cuts except those in the armed forces, where we want to see a few more cuts taking place and no more nuclear weapons.
Our friends from Hezbollah, our friends from Hamas.
You were arrested at a demonstration in support of an IRA terrorist in 1986. You were a regular at IRA-linked troops out rallies. Can you condemn unequivocally the IRA?
Look, bombing is wrong. Of course, all bombing is wrong. And of course.
Yeah, so pretty much they're playing a bunch of kind of his out of context quotes, and that is what they are. That's pretty much their big deal here. A little bit lighter on the policy than Labour is, at least. So they're kind of doing their whole thing with the. They're trying to push the Brexit. They're trying to say, kind of fear mongering about Jeremy Corbyn. And while he just obviously is far left guy, slightly less far left than he used to be. As it happens, I think that's probably a little bit for the better. He has said some pretty controversial things in the past, but definitely is someone who I think if you consider yourself anywhere to the left thing, if you consider yourself anywhere to the left, like I think you got to support Jeremy Corbyn for president. If you want to see Britain become a stable country, because if you don't, I mean, let's be honest, Boris Johnson will become the prime minister. A big factor of that is this party, the Lib Dems, which we'll get to. It's kind of the centrist Democrat, the corporate Democrat party in the UK. But we'll get to that in a moment. But first I want to talk about what the strategy is for Labour as they wind things down. They're looking to focus on Brexit-backed voters in the final fortnight. Jeremy Corbyn has attempted to play down Labour's general election strategy shake-up for the last 2 weeks of the campaign as the party pivots towards trying to save vulnerable heartlands in the North and Midlands. The Labour Party party leader insisted that he would take the same anti-austerity message to all parts of the country for his plan for nature launch in Southampton, yet behind the scenes, strategists are instigating a switch from going after Tory marginals to consolidating seats they already hold and trying to win back Leave voters. The YouGov MRP poll has Labour at 211 seats there, so it's very, 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 very tough, at least in the YouGov MRP poll, which is going to be the lowest since 1983. Our campaign is in every part of the country. I'm traveling all around the country, and I say the same thing at every place I go. I don't have one message for one group, addressing questions about his campaign to change course. As you can see, this is in The Guardian here. This is from The Guardian. To give you a little sample of some of the bias here that is taking place. Heather Stewart and Kate Proctor writing this in The Guardian. You can see just the negative framing that makes you really blink. And The Telegraph is a pretty what you would think left-wing publication. Like, it's an English publication. It probably takes left positions, but it's not like crazy. Not a crazy tabloid like The Sun. But again, they just batter and push and push and push. when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn and just the incredibly negative framing in which the entire media views him. If you look in Labour ad, or Labour 2019 general election, you type that into YouTube, as I was just doing, Labour 2019 general election, just type that in, and the first thing is, in the Telegraph, a catalogue of the Labour's outrageous spending promises. Like, the bias here is just eye-popping, at least for people in America who, by the way, think that their media is bad. The Guardian understands that after beginning a campaign with a much more resolutely offensive strategy, the party recognizes now that has much more to do in holding back constituencies in Brexit voting areas. It plans to hammer home the benefits of a pared-down set of its manifesto commitments that will put money directly in the pockets of voters in these constituencies. Labour strategists also say that it'll focus relentlessly on the risk of returning Boris Johnson to number 10 for 5 years and making to seek the election a binary choice between Labour and the Tories in hope of squeezing the Liberal Democrat vote further, which is really what they, I think, have to do to win. Even before Wednesday evening, YouGov projection, which gave Johnson a 68-seat majority and predicted Labour would lose 14 seats, party strategists were concerned about the imperative of appealing to Leave voters. They point out that even in the 2017 general election, 6 seats Labour lost were all in Leave areas, and even in those they held, the increase in Labour's vote share was significantly lower than elsewhere. So that's their strategy coming in to these next few days. Now let's take a look at what the Conservatives are up to coming into this. Or no joke, as we his name is Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson. That's his leader, the leader of the current British Prime Minister and leader of the Tory Party. Let's see what he is up to. He is currently literally. Then this is kind of unbelievable. He is showing a picture, a reporter named Joe Pike, for ITV, and the ITV calendar, which is a channel over there. He tried to show Boris Johnson the picture of Jack Willamette Barr, who's a 4-year-old kid with suspected pneumonia, forced to line a pile of coats on the floor of a Leeds hospital. And as you can see, he was not happy about that.
Have you seen the photo, Prime Minister? Have you seen the photo?
I've just been told about it by the BBC. We need to be making investments.
This is the photo.
We need to be making investments now. And that's why we're putting £34 billion in.
This is a 4-year-old boy, Prime Minister, suspected of pneumonia, forced to lie on the floor on a pile of coats.
I understand. And obviously...
And no one's going to turn around and blame Labour for that, because what they have been doing is just Conservatives have just completely underfunded the NHS there, which is very well valued in Britain. So here's the reaction of the Prime Minister.
We have every possible sympathy for everybody who has a bad experience in the NHS. And that's why we're putting the record investment into the NHS now. But we cannot get on and make those investments. We cannot get on and turn this country around, put in 20,000 more police, upgrading 20 hospitals, 40 new hospitals.
I'm talking about this boy, Prime Minister. How do you feel looking at that photo?
Of course. And let me tell you that I haven't done a chance.
Why don't you look at it now, Prime Minister?
Look
at it now.
For those of you who... This is a obviously a video from ITV because it's a TV channel, but he's refusing to look at the phone. He's looking straight into the eyes of the reporter. He's refusing to look at the phone.
If you don't mind, I'll give you an interview now. What we are doing is we are taking this country forward, and we are investing in the NHS. And what would be the worst thing possible would be to have a government that is mired in more deadlock, more disarray, and unable to move forward. So I have every sympathy with...
You refuse to look at the photo. You've taken my phone, put it in your pocket, Prime Minister. Is in crisis. What's your response to that?
Well, I'm sorry. It's a terrible, terrible photo, and I apologise, obviously, to the families and all those who have terrible experiences in the NHS. But
yeah, so you put the... It's like, Prime Minister, you've just taken my phone and put it in my pocket. The NHS is in crisis. What do you have to say to that? Like, I mean, this is very, very strange. Anyway, so when Boris Johnson's election on December 12th hinges on the British Prime Minister's promise to leave the European Union, obviously, we all know that. But the thing is, and we just heard about the NHS, Johnson has remade the Conservative Party, pushing out longtime party members wary of a firm break from the EU to cast the election as a chance to build a parliamentary majority focused on